Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone. This is Learning Life Skills Together weekly Zoom meeting number 78, and I am here with Pamela Warfield, who's the supervisor of the Student Assistance Program at Devereux Educational Strategies and Solutions. And so you can see that the word student is in there. So we're looking out at schools, even though we're recording this in the summer. So gives us both a chance to relax and talk about it. So what we're going to do is, as you know, a short practice to get ourselves together. And I want to take a look again at that really most basic practice that I hope everyone is sort of ingraining in their lives. It's the practice called STOP. S-T-O-P, and that means that there are 4 steps because there's 4 letters. So let's do the S for stop. Just put a pause in whatever's going on right now. See if you can just bring yourself a little bit to quiet. And the T is take a step back. So, we lean into the future constantly. And maybe you could just be here in the here and now with just what's happening, which may not actually be that much. And there's another T as well, which is take a breath. So maybe you could do that. You could take a deeper breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I think I need one more. I don't know about you, so. And the O then becomes observe. So we're just noticing what's happening with us in this moment. So we notice what's happening around us, the sounds. If your eyes are open, the sights. If they're closed, maybe the feel of the air moving or not. Sense of the temperature. Sense of your body, wherever it is, in whatever posture you've put it in. Just feeling it there. And maybe you could sort of relax into it because that's where you are right now. And you could notice what's happening in your mind. So the thoughts that are flowing, or maybe there's not much going on. So I always think of it as the weather in my mind. How is it? Clear and sunny? A little storm coming up. A storm is here. Just noticing how it is with you. And noticing any emotion that might be here right now. And you could name that emotion to yourself. Just so you know where you are. And so now we have observed what's going on. And we can proceed. That's the P. So here we go. First, I'm going to ask Pamela, how was that for you? What do you find when you check in?
Actually, that was very relaxing and it centered me some from thinking about all the other things that go on in our
Okay.
lives.
So the weather was a little breezy, shall we say?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what I like to do is to sort of talk about what the Student Assistance Program does in the schools in
Mhm.
light of learning life skills together, sort of our basic structure. So when
Mhm.
people come on to our website and into our program, which is very easy to do, by the
Mhm.
way, you just come in, you sign on very simply, and everything is then available to you. And before you even sign on, there are things that are available to you. One, these weekly Zoom meetings, they're all posted and ready for you to listen to and scroll through. The other thing is we have a tile on the front page that talks about when your child is in crisis. And so part of what we think about is how do we be sure that we're handling the crisis as best we can? The program itself is a preventive program. And so we're hoping we don't get to that place, but we do sometimes. And so we need to know how to handle that. And I'm sure that that's something that you
Mhm.
think about and work with, Pamela. So maybe you could start there with sort of that emergency side of things, the
Sure.
crisis with the kid. Yeah.
Sure. So if your child, the student's experiencing a crisis, first of all, take a deep breath because you don't want them to know what's going through your own head. But
That's
you
exactly
know,
what we say.
right away, 988, because the wonderful thing in Chester County is when you call that number, they're going to be able to direct you to what is necessary at the time for that student. So anytime there's a crisis, we let parents know, don't hesitate, call 988. They will walk you through it. If it turns out it's not a crisis, they're going to be able to give you resources to go to. And if it is this crisis, that's who you want to be talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
Mhm.
So we got that in.
Yes.
So the next thing is that we have these four skills, the life skills that we talk about in learning life skills together. And so there's skills that everyone needs.
Mhm.
Most of parents and carers have, and maybe not all of them know that they even have them because they're so obviously things that we do as successful adults.
Mhm.
Um, and since we're not necessarily paying attention to them, we may not be demonstrating them, in our homes with our kids. And that's really, one of the big reasons for learning life skills together is that we want kids to see what it looks like to have a life that has some balance in it.
Yes.
I mean, I won't say a balanced life because most of us don't have that,
Right.
but we come to balance, from time to time and when we need to. So, we have these four skills. And so, real quickly, they're paying attention to what's happening around you and what's happening within you. And we did that for about 30 seconds. And the next one is emotion regulation. So, how do we get ourselves back into balance? Because we're floating along,
Mhm.
we're rolling along on the waves, right? And then, how do we get through tough times? Which is what we all struggle with. Kids in particular, when they're in crisis, are in something that's happening that's not just in that moment. It's
Mhm.
going on, and how do we handle that? And then finally, once we have all that under our belt, how do we communicate effectively? How do we make sure we get what we need, in this world? So can we just take them one at a time? Okay.
Sure.
Number
And would you
three.
like me to explain what student assistance programming is for our parents
Actually,
out there?
that would be terrific.
Okay. So in a general, like large picture, student assistance program, which I'm now going to refer to as SAPs because it's a lot shorter, they do exist in all our schools in Chester County,
Okay.
and in Pennsylvania. Some schools are going to differ in how they function. I'm going to talk about our best practice SAP teams in our schools. So SAP teams are made up of administrators, nurses, our guidance counselors, our teachers, and an outside community agency, which here in Chester County is through Devereux, I'm going to say now, so I don't have to say that long word. I am the supervisor here at DES for our SAP liaisons because each school has a liaison in its building.
Okay.
So the purpose of SAP is when a teacher, a guidance counselor, or a parent or a student themselves realize they're struggling and there's a barrier to learning. So typically that struggle is going to be with mental health or substance use or possibly both. So what we do is in our schools, you can refer a student to a SAP team. Then there's a four process that goes through. I'm not going to go into depth in the whole process, but what we're looking at is say a referral comes in on Tommy and Tommy's grades are dropping and maybe Tommy's hygiene isn't as strong as it used to be. And this referral comes from Tommy's science teacher. The team is going to send out observable behavior checklists to Tommy's teachers so that we can see what's being seen across the board.
Mm,
When we're getting these checklists back, if we're noticing changes, Tommy's grades are dropping, Tommy's putting his head down, in class, he's just not as peppy as he used to be, we're going to determine, is this an appropriate SAP referral?
right.
If that answer is yes, we contact the parent because the parent has the right and the authority to say, yes, please proceed, or I appreciate this call, but no, thank you.
Mm,
If the parent would like to move on in the SAP process, they then sign a document that says, yes, please proceed. And what we're proceeding to do is what is the appropriate helpful intervention for Tommy? Now, that might be a school group that's already in existence. It might be monitored by the guidance counselor, or it might be, we're concerned here for Tommy. We would like to see what the next steps should be. That's where the liaisons come into play. And what we do is a screening. We use a BH work screening that literally breaks it down in our domains. Let's see if I've memorized them. We have depression and anxiety domain, a suicide domain, substance use domain, eating disorders domain, and trauma. What this screening tool does is literally give us a severity index rating scale that lets us know what are the next steps. If we're
mm,
seeing that an outside treatment provider is needed, if a further assessment is needed, because again, we're just doing a screening. What we do is we work with the family, we work with the parent to connect them to our outside resources in Chester County, which luckily we have quite a few wonderful providers in Chester County. And we work with the parent on how to contact that provider so that a further assessment can take place. Whether or not counseling is needed, whether or not, what type of level of counseling and treatment is needed is all determined at the provider agencies. A liaison's also say Tommy, turns out Tommy is experimenting with marijuana. He might not actually meet the treatment need, but we know Tommy, we're concerned about Tommy. We want to help him make healthy coping choices. We then can give some psychoeducation about we meet with Tommy a few times, talk about the risks, talk about our healthy coping skills, talk about how to be mindful, and to be healthy. So that's really what SAP is. We're working to
yeah.
strengthen the child.
Yeah. And so just to bring it back to the four skills,
Yeah.
the one that I'm seeing right at the very start is the paying attention to what's happening
Yes.
around and within you. And
Yes.
so everyone in the school is basically using that skill and
Yes.
saying, "Oh, I'm observing this, I'm seeing this with this child."
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody on the team, regardless of your credentials, you're going through the SAP training, which is a 2-day training by the state provider here in
Wow.
Chester County. So yes, you,
Right.
you you're lots of training on how to identify a change in our students. Yes.
Right, right. And so I guess as a plug for what we're working on is
Mhm.
kids can notice in themselves
Yes.
if they're, if they have a little bit of this capacity to be mindful, to pay attention to what's happening with them.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And
You
friends can
yeah,
refer. Yes, if you
yeah,
notice your
yeah.
friend is having some struggles. And I always like to point out our screening is confidential unless students at harm for themselves or somebody else, then for safety reasons, confidentiality goes out the window. But the school itself is only receiving the recommendation, the parents receiving the recommendation. So it
Right.
really gives the student a chance to open up and really talk about their feelings.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Mhm.
So this whole idea of parents being, being more attuned to what's happening around them, makes a whole lot of sense because they will have maybe seen some of these things too.
Yes.
Or maybe they're the ones who make the approach. How does that work? If a parent sees something, can they call on the school in this?
Yes, that would be, I always recommend because I don't know, depending on the district, how your SAT team operates, but calling the guidance counselor. Yes.
Hmm.
And letting them know, they're aware about student assistance programming. Can they refer their child?
Right.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to that emotion regulation piece, which is really, kind of what I'm hearing in the description of a child,
Mhm.
who is maybe being noticed,
Mhm.
is that piece is maybe not as well developed as
Yeah.
it could be. And that's what we're after, sort of
Mhm.
the family unit, as well as, who the folks we call the carers, who could be, grandparents. It could be people standing in for parents, or it could be all the people that surround our kids that aren't
Mhm.
in the school.
Yes.
So clergy, Sunday school teachers, coaches, all those kinds of folks, to have them understanding the four life skills and demonstrating them, not
Mhm.
as a teacher, but as
Mhm.
somebody who's living their life. And,
Mhm.
we get to demonstrate um, the working with our emotions a lot when we're working with our kids.
Yes. No,
Because our
yes.
kids can get us pretty stirred up sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
And so for them to see us as work, to see us doing the stop.
Mhm.
And let's pause for a second here, take a breath, step back. What's going on here?
Mhm.
To have that happen again and again is really what we're trying to establish and promote with learning
Yes.
life skills together, so that it becomes second nature. It's none of this is proprietary knowledge, and it's not professional either. It's
Yes.
how we live our lives, you know?
I can share something not in the professional realm, but as a parent myself, I remember I would always say, Mom needs a moment, give
Hmm.
mom a moment. And I'll never forget the first time one of my children, my daughter, literally said that back to me. Mom, I need a moment. And I was like, wow.
Ooh, yeah.
That was pretty
Yeah.
cool to see. Yeah.
It's taking hold, and that's
Mhm.
not teaching. That's just sharing how we handle
Yeah.
ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. And so really, it sounds like as the kids move through the assistance program,
Yes.
that they're getting more formal training in those kinds of things.
Yes, and another thing I could bring up is we also do the liaisons do groups with healthy coping skills, or when they follow up with the student, we
Ah,
do
okay.
discuss that.
Right.
The nice thing about the SAP process is they look at, how's the student progressing? Are we seeing positive change? And if we're
Mm,
not, let's look at another intervention. If
right.
Tommy, say, is doing better, his grades are up, he's smiling more at school, we do close this out. So it's not that the process continues once there's been
Right.
improvement. Now, a parent or a teacher can re-refer, but
Sure.
really the
Yeah.
goal is how do we address this need and how
Yeah.
do we support the child?
Yeah. So as the child comes back into balance
Yes.
or the capacity for balance,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean that's great because you don't want to have that tag on you. Yeah.
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 Yeah. To get the
That's
support.
yeah.
And the child has to agree as well. So this is a
Ah,
voluntary program, SAP. So yeah.
terrific. Okay. So now we have the hard piece. It's the hard piece for adults, and it's the crisis piece for a lot of kids is something's happening with me that I can't get a handle on. I'm all out of balance and I don't see myself getting out of it. How do I continue to work through that? How do I work with what I've been dealt here?
Mhm.
Right? And
Mhm.
so maybe you could talk a little bit about that from the perspective of the program first.
Well, I think first is, us letting youth know, talk about it, right? Don't keep that inside. So if you're feeling
Right.
this way, who in the school or who at home can I express this to? Right?
Mm,
We don't want to keep it bottled up. There's so many
right.
people out there. There's always hope, right? So who do we connect with?
Yeah.
So once at the school, at the student assistance, when I'm talking this process, if it is a crisis, we're going to actually step outside of SAP and we're going to connect this student to who at school, or we ourselves will contact the parent, will contact 988 so that they can have a quick evaluation.
Hmm.
Because in the SAP world, we need parent consent. So we're not going to get to that student right away.
Right.
Where if that student is struggling and they're in a hardship and it's like, what do I do? I can't handle this. We're going to expedite that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really just as adults in the community and in our schools and at home, letting the student know we're here, come to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll get
Yeah.
you help. Hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that skill is since we are a prevention
Hmm.
program here, the idea is that yes, we have this big problem.
Hmm.
And yes, we need to work on it. So a lot of the trouble comes up when we don't want to work on it. When we
And it
don't
can,
want to face it. And that's when we move into, well, if I smoke this,
yeah.
if I drink this, it doesn't feel so bad for a while.
Yeah. But and it's working with that child, it's
Yes.
working with your child saying that's a temporary fix. That's
Yeah.
not going to get to the root of what is
That's
going on with us.
that's it, and that's what we're really emphasizing in the program is that we need to be able to take a break from it, though.
Yes.
We need
Yes.
a healthy break from it. And so
Mhm.
what are those things that we can do? And that's really what a lot of our program is. Go
Yeah.
outside.
Yes.
Get some exercise, wear yourself out a little bit,
Yes.
walking or running or whatever it is. It will change how you feel. It will, because it's the feeling that we don't like,
Right,
the
right.
feeling.
Yes.
And so all of the things that we can do to change that, our program sort of looks at it, and I'm sure that's the deeper part of what happens to kids who get referred in and um, are offered therapy. I mean,
Mhm.
what our
Mhm.
program is based on dialectical behavior therapy, actually,
Mhm.
it's simplified and, squiggled around a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's basically those four skills
Mhm.
that we're talking about that when we have those, we can function, much more in balance.
Yes.
And this big one is being able to give ourselves a break and then
Mhm.
being able to go back and continue to work on our
Yeah.
thing that we got going, that we got to figure out, right? Yeah. So there's a certain amount of courage, I want to say, that we want to instill in people as well. But there are so many sort of wonderful things that we can do for ourselves while we're going through a difficult time.
Yes.
We have these four
Mhm.
big buckets that we talk about. One is going for a walk, which
Mhm.
I mean we all just sort of do that naturally as a default. You
Yeah.
know what? I gotta take a walk.
Yeah. Listen, I do it
I'm
every
done
day. I'm out
here.
there. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So we call it walking.
Mhm.
And then the next one is awe and beauty.
Mhm.
So yes, it's a distraction, but it's a distraction that makes us feel good, that we can access any time and that doesn't have effects downstream,
Yes.
right? So we're not intoxicating ourselves, except that we're going and looking at the mountain or the beautiful tree or whatever, and that takes us out of ourselves. A story does that.
Mhm.
A movie does that. That's what they're really designed to do, is to move us from this little self that's hurting so much into a bigger self that
Yes.
can work with it,
Yes.
right? And so we also talk about making things. When we're involved in a project, when we feel like are having some effect in the world, even if it's only, hey, I made breakfast for everybody,
Mhm.
it changes how we are and it changes how we're feeling in that moment. And we need sometimes that big shift.
Yes.
And then finally, belonging, which, I think is really the big one and really the hardest one for kids sometimes, and it's the hardest one for people sort of at the end of their lives too.
Mhm.
We loneliness is, in crisis proportions, as our Surgeon General told us,
Mhm.
and so to find places where it matters if we're there, to find those groups that want us and are there for us is really so important.
Mhm.
And we just I can't say enough about it. I'm a professor of public health, and one of the things that we really do know in public health is that people who have a support system, who have folks around them that care, do better
Mhm.
with their mental health and with their physical health.
Yeah.
They're just healthier people. And so, how do we set our kids up
Yes.
to have, those senses of belonging in those places where we can belong?
Yeah.
So that's really what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
So I don't know how those last couple fit in with SAP.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
yeah.
think we've had students say this is the first time I've said or I've shared this because
Mm,
the great thing is in our screening, we're asking some questions that maybe the students never been outright before. And it
Right.
really does give them an opportunity to say, you know what, I have had those thoughts before. And then we're able to help them. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So to be able to make that connection and feel that sense
yes,
of belonging and that
yeah,
also that sense of agency, that sense of, oh, this might
yeah.
make a difference.
Yes,
Yeah.
someone's listening and somebody can
Someone's
connect
listening.
me.
Something can
Yeah.
happen now.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, so, so important.
Yeah.
So cool. So when we sort of finish a conversation on our weekly Zoom meeting, we ask the person that we've been talking with for some words of wisdom or a watchword. So sometimes people have their wisdom boiled way down and they can just say, it's this. Other people, talk for
Yeah.
a while. So it's entirely up to you what you want to leave us
Yeah.
with.
I think let me see what comes to mind is, because I'm speaking to parents, correct? I'm speaking to,
Yes.
yes, is, be mindful, take a deep breath and be careful with your words because sometimes, it's harder to bring those words back in.
Mm.
So, and you
Yeah.
and if you make a mistake, own it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
if something comes up or if you don't handle the situation when your child's maybe in crisis or needs you and you make a mistake, let them know. Listen, I made a mistake. Let me try this again. So,
Yes, that's I think an incredibly important thing for parents to keep in mind is that it's not permanent. You can
exactly.
you can say, wait, no.
Yes.
I said I shouldn't have said that. Let me say
Yeah.
this. Let me do
Let,
this.
let
Yeah,
me back it up. And we're also showing our kids that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to own it. And,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's terrific. Thank you so much, Pamela. I really appreciate the conversation and the wisdom.
it was nice talking to you. Thank
All
you.
right. See you later.
Bye.